They say that before written history, before kings, before the first brick was ever laid in Mesopotamia, the world belonged to creatures far larger than humans, giants who walked the earth like living mountains. These beings, later called the Nephilim, were believed to be the offspring of divine watchers and mortal women, half angel, half flesh, powerful enough to crush a man's skull with one hand. Their footsteps shaped valleys, their voices rolled like thunderstorms. But there is a hidden part of this story that ancient texts only hint. Humans did not simply fear the Nephilim, they fought them. Long before the Bible, before Sumerian tablets, and long before the Greeks imagined titans, tribes of early humans forged a pact to survive. The Nephilim were not rulers, they were predators. They hunted people for sport, demanded sacrifices, and took villages as slaves. Bones of enormous size found in deep caves, split by stone tools, tell a truth that archaeologists are reluctant to admit. Someone small once stood against something massive. The story begins in a forgotten age, when Earth's climate was shifting. Ice retreated, forests expanded, and humankind spread cautiously across wild lands. In these forests and highlands lived a brotherhood of warriors known simply as the Ordai. They were not kings, but protectors, hunters who learned to track the giants. Their ancestors had seen what the Nephilim could do, entire families stolen in the night, settlements flattened under monstrous fists, so they dedicated their lives to war. The Ordai trained differently from any other ancient tribe. They built weapons of obsidian, sharper than steel when freshly struck. They coated arrows with toxins from plants and serpent venom. They studied how the giants breathed, how they moved, and, most importantly, how they died. A single blow from one of the Nephilim could tear 10 warriors apart, but a blade driven deep into the throat or a spear through the base of the skull could silence even these half-gods. But the Nephilim were not united. Some saw humanity as cattle. Others, twisted by celestial pride, saw themselves as rightful rulers. A few even sought peace. Yet the cruelest among them, giants like Azel the Bonebreaker and Raphan the Unyielding, would not allow humans to live free. It was in the shadow of a desert that would one day be called the Fertile Crescent, where rivers swelled with spring floods, that the first great clash erupted. Fires raged across the plains. The ground trembled under titanic strides. The Ordai, outnumbered and small as insects, charged into a battle that people today cannot imagine. They did not believe in surrender. They believed in vengeance. For the first time in history, humans struck fear into the hearts of giants. The battle did not begin with drums or war chants. It began in silence, an eerie wind blowing across scorched earth, carrying the smell of smoke and iron. The moon was full that night, hanging like a pale eye above the world. Its light revealed shapes too large to be shadows. The Nephilim were coming. The Ordai stood in formation, barely more than 500 warriors facing giants whose numbers seemed endless. Their leader, Kadesh, was a man carved from years of struggle, scarred arms, steeled eyes, a hunter's patience. He raised his spear, its tip glistening with venom pulled from desert vipers. When he spoke, it was not loud, but every warrior heard him as if the earth itself carried his words. No running, no fear. Tonight we prove what humans truly are. The giants roared in laughter when they saw how small their enemies were. To them, humans were toys, pests, something to be stepped on and forgotten. One giant, his skin the color of storm clouds, rushed forward, swinging a trunk-like arm. The impact crushed 3 Ordai warriors instantly, bones shattering like dry twigs. But that was the trap. Dozens of Ordai sprang from hidden trenches, throwing javelins tipped with obsidian. The weapons pierced the giant's ankle and calf wounds, insignificant to such a titan, but enough to slow his charge. When he fell to one knee, Kadesh sprinted forward. With the strength of every ancestor behind him, he plunged his spear into the giant's exposed throat. A deafening howl split the air, and the first Nephilim fell. For a moment, the battlefield froze. The giants stared at their fallen kin, shocked that a creature so small could inflict real death. Panic rippled through their ranks. If one could die, all could die. Then the fighting exploded into chaos. The Nephilim smashed boulders into the ground, sending shockwaves that hurled warriors through the air. They hurled flaming trees like spears. Some giants grabbed entire groups of men and tore them apart in flashes of brutality that would haunt survivors forever. Yet the Ordai adapted. They darted between the legs of their foes, climbing their backs like wolves attacking a mammoth. They targeted soft joints, groin, underarm, and back of the knee. And when the giants fell, dozens of blades struck at once, throats, hearts, eyes, every weak point discovered through years of secret observation. Azel, the bone breaker, notorious among the tribes for his cruelty, waded into the battle with a massive bronze axe stolen from fallen watchers. He struck at anything that moved, friend or foe. His laughter was madness, echoing like thunder. Kadesh faced him. The human leader knew this monster was the symbol of their suffering. If Azel fell, the Nephilim's confidence would crumble. But the gap between the two was terrifying. One, a man of flesh and bone, the other, a creature of myth, towering like a living fortress. Still, Kadesh didn't hesitate. He charged. Humanity's hope ran with him.
Kadesh sprinted across the ground, trembling beneath Azel's every step. The bone breaker's eyes glowed an eerie gold, like molten sun trapped in a monster's skull. His grin stretched wickedly as he towered over the small warrior rushing toward him. To Azel, this was entertainment. To Kadesh, it was destiny. Azel swung his axe, a blade forged from metals no human tribe had ever touched. The weapon whistled through the air with such force that the wind alone could have ripped flesh from bone. Kadesh dived, rolling beneath the blow as it struck the ground behind him. The earth cracked open like a broken shell, dust exploding upward. In that instant, Kadesh thrust his spear toward the giant's ankle. The obsidian tip sliced into flesh, venom instantly entering the bloodstream. Azel roared, not from real pain, but from outrage. Like a lion bitten by a flea, he reached down and swatted Kadesh aside. The human leader flew through the air, slamming into a dead tree that splintered on impact. For a moment, everything blurred. Kadesh's breath fled his lungs, and his vision swam. The world tilted. He tasted blood. But he forced himself up, slowly, painfully. His ribs screamed, his legs trembled, yet his spirit stood unbroken. Across the battlefield, countless Ordai warriors continued the fight because he had told them not to fear. Azel marched toward him, heavy footsteps cratering the ground. "You are brave," the giant growled, voice shaking the sky, "but bravery is not strength." Kadesh adjusted his grip on the spear. His left arm hung numb, likely fractured. Still, he spat blood from his mouth and said, "Strength is nothing without purpose." Azel lunged. The axe came again in an arc of death. Kadesh leaped forward into the attack. The axe missed by inches, but its wind tore through his shoulder. Before Azel could raise the weapon again, Kadesh was already climbing, grabbing onto knotted muscles of the giant's forearm. He used the spear as a climbing hook, planting its blade deep into skin. Azel howled, trying to shake him off, but the human clung like a desperate wolf. He reached the elbow, then the shoulder. Each movement left bloody handprints behind. Azel's free hand clawed at him, nicking Kadesh's back, but not ripping him free. The giant swung wildly, stumbling, losing balance. Then Kadesh saw his target, the throat, exposed for just a heartbeat. With every shred of strength left in his battered body, Kadesh yanked the spear free and drove it straight into the soft flesh beneath the giant's jaw. A shriek tore the battlefield apart. Azel thrashed, collapsing to one knee, gargling blood that poured like a river. Kadesh rode the fall, ripping the spear sideways, opening the wound wider. The bone breaker's roar faded into a choking gasp. The terror of countless tribes, the monster who had broken children's bones for sport, fell face first into the dust. The earth shook, and the Ordai screamed in triumph. But as Azel's lifeless body settled, the other Nephilim stopped fighting. Their eyes narrowed, a shiver of ancient fury spread among them. In killing one of their greatest, humans had declared something far more dangerous than war. They had declared rebellion. Azel's massive corpse lay twisted on the ground, his blood pooling like a crimson lake. Every Ordai warrior who saw him fall felt their spirit ignite. The impossible had just happened. A human had slain a Nephilim warlord. But victory brought no relief. It only awakened something far darker in the remaining giants. Raphon, the unyielding, taller than any stone tower known in that age, stepped forward. Unlike Azel, who fought with wild cruelty, Raphon was cold, controlled, and terrifyingly intelligent. His pale skin seemed carved from ice, his hair black as raven's wings. His eyes didn't rage, they calculated. He studied Azel's still body, then turned his gaze slowly to the scattered bands of Ordai. "You insects forget your place," he thundered. "One death changes nothing." The giants answered his call with a unified roar. The ground trembled like the world itself was afraid. Kadesh staggered to his feet, vision spinning. His ears rang. Every breath was a battle. Yet he raised his blood-soaked spear and shouted to his warriors, "Hold the line! Tight formation!" The Ordai shifted, shields interlocking, spears angled upward. They had broken a god's sun, but now they faced a storm. Giants charged as if the earth pulled them forward. Their feet crushed bones, snapped trees, toppled barricades. Stones hurled through the air like meteors. The night flashed with fire as giants lit pitch-soaked timbers and wielded them as burning clubs. The Ordai countered with tactics refined through generations. They moved like one creature, striking, retreating, reforming. When a giant fell to one knee, dozens swarmed its legs. Arrows coated with venom rained down from hidden rock ledges. Human ingenuity fought divine brutality. The air filled with screams, both human and giant.
Near the center of the chaos, Raphon strode through death untouched. Warriors attacked him from every angle, but he brushed them aside as though batting away leaves. His calm cruelty was more terrifying than Azel's madness had ever been. When he reached Azel's fallen body, he placed a hand on the giant's cold back. Then he knelt. In a deep, rumbling voice, he whispered an ancient phrase, a death rite known only to the Nephilim. The ground beneath them pulsed as if responding. For the first time since Azel's birth, Raphon bowed his head. When he rose, his face was void of mercy. With a sudden movement too fast for a creature his size, he grabbed a wounded Ordai warrior by the torso. The man screamed once before Raphon pulled, tearing him in half like cloth. Blood sprayed across the dirt. Kadesh's heart clenched. They hadn't just angered the giants, they had awakened vengeance. The battle now surged into madness. The Ordai's numbers dwindled, and though giants fell, more pressed forward. Moonlight flickered behind clouds of smoke, painting everything in a pale nightmare glow. But then, through the chaos, an ancient horn sounded. Not from the Ordai, not from the Nephilim, from the mountains. a sound older than both races. Every warrior froze, every giant turned. The horn's call echoed against the night sky, long, haunting, and impossibly deep. Even the Nephilim paused, their colossal breaths frosting in the air. Warriors and giants alike scanned the ridges surrounding the battlefield, sensing a new presence, ancient and watchful. Kadesh wiped blood from his eyes, squinting toward the mountains. Who is that? The Ordai were not the only humans in the world, though many had forgotten their distant cousins. Far beyond rivers and deserts lived tribes who rarely revealed themselves, humans who had grown strong by surviving among ruins older than memory. They called themselves the Rakim, meaning shadow of the mountain. Unlike the Ordai, the Rakim did not fight giants out of duty. They fought them out of hatred. A second horn blast rolled like thunder. Figures began to appear, first silhouettes, then warriors, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. They carried spears with hooked blades, shields layered with stone scales, and helmets shaped like snarling beasts. They marched in perfect silence. At their front walked a woman, tall for a human, cloaked in wolf fur, with a long scar running across her cheek. Her eyes were dark, filled not with fear, but with the memory of 1,000 battles. She lifted her spear, the tip carved from a claw rumored to be taken from a fallen Nephilim. Rafan stared down at her. Another tribe of insects? You come to die as well? The woman stepped forward, planting her spear firmly into the ground. Her voice cut through the roaring fires and dying screams with a sharp, steady command. We come to finish what you began. The Rakim formation moved like a single organism, splitting to reveal a series of massive ballistae dragged over the mountains on sledges of bone. The machines locked into place with heavy thuds. Warriors cranked the tension cords woven from sinew thicker than any giant's hair. Bolts the size of tree trunks were loaded, each tipped with obsidian spikes designed purely to kill giants. Rafan's expression shifted for the first time, from confidence to recognition. He knew these weapons. The Rakim had slain many Nephilim in ambushes across distant lands. They were the nightmare the giants whispered among themselves. The Rakim commander raised her arm. Loose! The first volley screamed through the air. 2 giants fell instantly, bolts impaling their chests with unstoppable force. A third was struck through the mouth, pinning its jaw shut as blood poured in torrents. The battlefield erupted into chaos again, but this time humans struck with equal power. Kadesh, barely standing, felt hope surge through him. The Rakim commander glanced at him as their forces intertwined. Ordai? She asked. He nodded, gripping his broken spear. You fight well, but tonight we kill gods. Rafan bellowed with fury, voice cracking the air like thunder, and charged the new threat. The Rakim roared in answer, advancing to meet him head-on. The war against the Nephilim had changed. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival.
They were fighting for dominance. And for the first time, the giants were afraid. The battlefield had transformed into a nightmarish clash of titans and mortals. Firelight flickered across torn ground, illuminating bodies broken on both sides. The Rakim and Ordai fought shoulder to shoulder, 2 peoples who had never met, now bound by the same desperation. Rafan, driven by fury and pride, towered over everyone as he charged. His footsteps made the earth buckle. 2 Rakim spearmen tried to intercept him. They may as well have been dust. He swatted one into a rock wall so hard it exploded into fragments. He stomped the other into the soil as though crushing a grape. Then he locked eyes again with the Rakim commander. "You will regret standing against us," he growled. She lifted her spear, no fear, only fire. Nephilim ruled the earth long enough. Rafan swung his massive arm, intending to decapitate her in one blow. She ducked beneath it and rolled, faster than any ordinary human should move. She had trained her whole life for this, to hunt giants. When she came up, her spear slashed across Rafan's calf. It drew blood, but only a thin line. The giant snarled, enraged more by defiance than injury. The Rakim ballistae fired again. Several bolts struck giants at a distance, one piercing a shoulder, another driving through a kneecap. The giants screamed, collapsing under their own weight. More Ordai swarmed in, hacking away at weak points before the Titans could rise. Yet, for every giant killed, 10 more humans fell. Kaddish stumbled through the fray, searching desperately for survivors of his warband. He found Arun, the youngest of the Ordai, pinned under the crushed remains of a comrade. Kaddish knelt, trying to lift the body, but his injured arms trembled uselessly. The boy coughed up blood. "Kaddish," Arun gasped. "Don't stop fighting." His chest fell still. Kaddish closed his eyes, jaw trembling with rage. He rose, each step heavier than the last. He looked around and realized a truth that sank into his bones. Even united, humans were still losing. The Nephilim, wounded and enraged, regrouped behind Rafan. They slammed their fists against their chests in a terrible rhythm, a battle call meant to shake fear into the hearts of all who opposed them. The Rakim commander noticed Kaddish's limp approach. "Leader of the Ordai," she called over the chaos, "if we fall tonight, humanity ends." Kaddish gripped his spear until blood dripped from his palm. "Then tonight we do not fall." He raised his voice, shouting across the battlefield, "For the dead, for the living, for our future." A roar erupted from both tribes, raw, primal, desperate. Humans charged, giants charged. The collision shook the sky. But as they met, the moon vanished, swallowed by a massive cloud of wings overhead. A huge shadow descended, a shape neither human nor Nephilim. The ground quaked beneath its landing. Every warrior, man and giant alike, stood frozen in awe and terror, because something older than both species had just awakened. The creature that landed between the two armies towered even above the Nephilim, its wings unfurled like dark banners, each membrane thicker than a ship's sail. Its eyes glowed a burning crimson, ancient fury swirling inside them. When it exhaled, the air rippled with scorching heat. Even the bravest warriors staggered back. Rafan froze, recognition and dread flashing through his cold composure. "Impossible," he whispered. The Ordai and Rakim stared in horror as the monster reared its head, revealing a crown of jagged horns. Its body was armored in scales black as obsidian, each plate written with symbols that pulsed like molten fire. Its voice, when it spoke, resonated like the groaning of mountains. "Children of Watchers, your crimes have roused the forgotten." The creature was neither man nor giant. It was a fallen, one of the ancient Watchers cast down from the heavens for violating forbidden laws. A being who once walked among stars, now reduced to a monstrous prison of flesh and rage. Humans had myths of them, whispered warnings in the oldest caves.
Rafan's composure was shattered. "You were sealed beneath the earth, buried for eternity." The fallen shook the ground with laughter. "Your arrogance has weakened those seals. You brought war to this land and weakened me." For the first time, the Nephilim, so feared, so powerful, looked small. The fallen spread its wings and roared. A shockwave of flame erupted outward. Dozens of giants were blasted off their feet, bodies igniting like dry grass. Humans shielded their faces, feeling the heat scorch their skin. The Rakim commander grabbed Kadesh's shoulder. "This thing is not our ally." Kadesh nodded, breath trembling. "It wants the world for itself." The giant Raphan charged the fallen, swinging a shattered boulder like a mace. The fallen caught it one-handed. With a violent twist, he smashed the rock and Raphan into the ground. The impact made the battlefield jump beneath everyone's feet. The unyielding was pinned, struggling. For the first time in his life, he was overpowered. The fallen leaned close, voice dripping with malice. "You defied the heavens once when you were born. Now you will pay the price." Flame surged from its jaws. Raphan screamed, a sound filled with rage, pain, and disbelief before fire engulfed him completely. The strongest of the Nephilim writhed, burned, and fell silent. His enormous body turned to charred stone. A hush fell over the battlefield. Giants stumbled back in terror. Humans stared with wide eyes. What could kill a Nephilim king as if he were nothing? Kadesh whispered, "If this thing wins, there will be no humans left to remember this night." The Rakim commander tightened her grip on her spear. "Then we fight a god of the old world, together." Humans who had spent centuries warring with giants now pivoted in unison, weapons trembling but raised. Giants, bleeding, limping, terrified, did the same. Ancient enemies stood side by side, not because they wanted to, but because a new enemy had come, one too powerful for either to face alone. And for the first time in history, humans and Nephilim are prepared to fight as one. The battlefield, moments ago filled with hatred between mortals and giants, now held a fragile unity. Humans and Nephilim stood shoulder to shoulder, glancing at each other with distrust, but also with a shared terror, because towering before them was a being neither tribe could defeat alone. The fallen spread its wings again, blotting out the moon like a living eclipse. Its laughter curled through the air like smoke. "Look at you," it mocked. "Enemies since the dawn of your creation, now united only by fear." It stepped forward, and the ground sunk beneath its weight. Fire dripped from between the scales of its chest like molten tears. A single swipe of its talon had already carved a deep gash through the earth wide enough to swallow 10 warriors whole. A surviving Nephilim warrior, skin shadowed blue, snarled defiantly. He raised a stone hammer the size of a tree trunk and hurled it with all his colossal strength. The weapon struck the fallen's ribs and shattered, pieces raining down like hail. The fallen did not even flinch. With a casual flick of one wing, it knocked the giant backward, bones crunching, body rolling lifelessly across the dirt. The message was clear. Nephilim's strength meant nothing here. The Rakim commander stepped forward, fearless and furious. "We need its wings grounded," she shouted, "or it will burn us from the sky." Kadesh, gasping through cracked ribs, nodded. "Cut tendons, hamstring it like a beast, take away mobility." But who could even reach those tendons? A towering Nephilim stepped next to Kadesh, bloodied and shaking from battle. He was younger than the others, his left horn broken, his beard streaked with soot. Yet he looked down at the human leader, not with contempt, but resolve. He rumbled, voice trembling, "I am Yorin. Azel was my brother, but this fallen killed hundreds of my kin in ages long forgotten. We were created by gods, but he is older than them." Kadesh met his gaze, "Then fight with us." Yorin tightened his grip on a jagged spear taken from a shattered ballista bolt. "I will carry your small ones, lift them high, strike where I cannot." It was a plan born of desperation, but it was the only chance they had. The fallen inhaled, flames seething in his lungs. "Scatter!" Kadesh shouted. A torrent of fire blasted forward, melting armor, turning sand into glass.
Giants formed shields with their bodies, protecting clusters of Rekim and Ordai hidden beneath them. Screams echoed, but those who survived dashed forward while the monster's flame still roared. The fallen paused, smoke curling from its jaws, and turned, sensing motion. Yorin was running directly towards him, 6 humans clinging to his back and shoulders, spears poised. The fallen's eyes narrowed. "You dare, offspring!" Yorin roared, full of every death he had witnessed, every family stolen by the old god's cruelty. "We dare for the world!" He leaped higher than any giant ever had, thrashing wings, tearing through the air. Humans clung tight, spears lifted. If they failed, humanity ended tonight. If they succeeded, the age of giants and gods would finally break. Yorin's leap defied everything the fallen believed about the Nephilim. For a heartbeat, the monster's flaming eyes widened in surprise that one of the offspring would dare strike a god. Then the battle collided with the sky. The fallen swung its taloned arm, aiming to swat Yorin from the air like a fly, but Yorin twisted mid-leap, using his momentum to crash sideways onto the creature's shoulder. The impact thundered like a collapsing mountain. The 6 humans clinging to Yorin reacted instantly. Kadesh, teeth clenched against pain, drove his spear into the fallen's wing joint, buried to the hilt. The Rekiran warriors followed, hacking at the membrane with twin-bladed axes. Black blood sizzled as it hit the ground like acid drops. The fallen roared, earth trembling beneath their feet. "Insolent worms!" It thrashed violently, wings flailing. 2 humans were ripped free, plummeting to their deaths below, but the others held tight, driving blades deeper. Yorin wrapped both arms around the fallen's massive neck, his muscles bulging, veins bursting beneath skin. The fallen's claws slashed upward, catching Yorin across the ribs. Flesh tore, blood poured, but the giant did not let go. On the ground, the Rekim commander signaled to her troops, "Now, while it's grounded!" She sprinted forward, launching herself onto the beast's tail, climbing hand over hand towards its spine. Dozens followed, scaling the fallen's body like ants swarming prey. The fallen managed to wrench one wing free, but only one. The other hung, shredded and useless. Its massive frame teetered, balance disrupted, and then it fell. The impact shattered the land. A crater of dirt and stone erupted around them. Humans were thrown aside. Even giants stumbled. Dust and fire billowed upward into a choking cloud. But through that haze, the Rekim commander emerged, driving her spear directly into one of the glowing sigils along the fallen spine. The symbol dimmed instantly, like a star extinguished. The fallen let out a piercing scream that shook the air, a sound not meant for mortal ears. Everyone collapsed, clutching their skulls as the shriek sawed through bone and soul. The commander twisted her spear, carving through the ancient mark.
Kadesh understood then. Those symbols were its binding, its life forged into runes. Destroy the sigils, and the fallen could bleed. Yorin fought to keep his grip as the monster writhed beneath him. "Strike the markings!" Kadesh shouted hoarsely. "Every one of them!" Chaos turned to purpose. Ordai, Rakim, and Nephilim swarmed the fallen's body, targeting the glowing inscriptions etched along its limbs, wings, and chest. Each time a mark shattered under a blade or a spear, the monster weakened. Black fire sputtered, light dimmed in its eyes, but the fallen was far from finished. It slammed its enormous fist into the ground, launching a shockwave that sent warriors flying like broken toys. Scales split open, releasing unholy energy that crackled like lightning. "I will not be slain by vermin," it snarled, staggering back to its feet. "I brought knowledge to your world. I shaped your flesh. I am your creator." Yorin's voice thundered in answer, part roar, part declaration. "You are not our god." And with that, The war entered its most desperate moment, a battle not just for the world, but for the right of humanity to exist at all. The Fallen's proclamation echoed like a curse across the battlefield, claiming dominion over all flesh and spirit. But humanity, bruised and bloodied, answered with a defiant roar. For the first time in ancient memory, mortals refused to kneel. Kadesh limped through the chaos, spear broken to half its length, but his resolve sharper than ever. He looked up at the towering creature, runes still glowing across its hide, each one a piece of a prison that had failed to hold it. Each one is a weakness. "Cut the marks!" he shouted again, voice ragged. "Carve its story out of its body." The Rakim commander had already reached another sigil near the Fallen's shoulder, her blade sawing sparks from enchanted flesh. The monster screeched and threw its weight sideways, slamming into the ground. Warriors scrambled to keep hold, some falling, some hanging on with desperate nails and teeth. Yoren, still clinging to the beast's neck, felt his ribs grind as he tightened his hold. His vision blurred, but he forced himself to breathe. He thought of Asel, his brutal brother, dead by a mortal spear, yet still a brother. He thought of the giants slain by the Fallen long before humans existed. Rage stitched strength into his failing muscles. With a bellow, he wrapped his legs around the Fallen's throat and pulled. The Fallen clawed at him, talons slicing into Yoren's back, peeling skin like bark. Blood streamed down his sides, but he endured. His grip forced the monster's head downward, exposing the runes encircling its neck. Kadesh saw the opening. "This is it!" He sprinted forward, every step agony, every breath fire. He leapt onto the Fallen's shoulder, scrounging along scales slick with blood. Hands tearing, fingers splitting, he climbed, driven by the memory of every Ordai corpse scattered across the night. With a final surge, he reached the neck sigil glowing beneath Yoren's arms. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Kadesh screamed a wordless cry and plunged the shattered spear into the glowing mark. The rune burst, a shockwave of black light exploding outward. The Fallen's scream was more than pain. It was cosmic fury, a sound that made stars tremble. The beast's wings spasmed, folding like broken gates. Flames sputtered from its jaws. Its knees struck the earth hard, leaving craters beneath them. "Hold it!" the commander yelled. "Don't let it rise!" Rakim axes hacked into the bindings of ancient power. Nephilim fists hammered marks that once chained their kind. Obsidian blades stabbed symbols that kept gods alive. One by one, the runes shattered. Light flickered across the Fallen's body, bright, then dimming like a dying constellation. Its movement slowed, its fire guttered. The monster that once burned worlds struggled now to stay standing. Yoren locked eyes with Kadesh from across the beast's shoulders. Both understood. This was their only chance. The Rakim commander raised her spear high, pointing to the final glowing mark, burning fiercely at the center of the Fallen's chest. The heart sigil, the core of its stolen life. "Strike together!" she roared. Kadesh's legs shook, Yoren's blood poured. Soldiers from two warring races gathered all that remained of their strength. And as they charged towards the heart of ancient terror, the Fallen's eyes burned with a different fire now. Not rage, not hatred, but fear. Because for the first time in eternity, mortals had become the ones to judge the gods. The heart sigil glowed like a dying star, each pulse weaker than the last. The Fallen staggered, wings dragging in the dirt, claws tearing trenches as it fought to remain upright. The battlefield's fires flickered lower, as if even the flames were waiting to see what would come next. Kadesh reached the creature's chest first. His lungs wheezed, his legs threatening to collapse beneath him, but he raised the broken spear anyway. The jagged obsidian tip quivered inches from the mark. Behind him, hundreds of humans gathered, every one shaking yet unyielding. Yoren lumbered forward, one hand pressed against his torn ribs. His steps left pools of blood. Still he leaned down, cupping massive hands to give Kadesh a final lift towards the sigil. "For those we lost," he rumbled. Kadesh climbed into the giant's palms and steadied himself, now eye level with the blazing rune. He could feel its heat singing his skin. It pulsed to a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat, the heartbeat of a god. The fallen tried to rise again, fueled by a last surge of immortal arrogance. "You think killing me will save you?" it hissed. "Without my kind, you will fall to chaos. I gave shape to your world." The Rakim commander answered from below, her voice sharp as her blade. "We will shape it ourselves." With a final shout, Kadesh drove the shattered spear into the heart sigil. The sigil erupted. Light, black and white at once, blazed from the wound. The fallen's head snapped back, an unearthly shriek tearing from its throat. The symbol cracked, split, and finally shattered, and with it something deep and ancient broke. The monster convulsed. Flames burst from every fracture in its flesh. The air swelled with a pressure that crushed lungs and cracked earth. Then, like a volcano collapsing inward, the fallen imploded. Its colossal body folded, collapsing into a pit of darkness as its flesh turned to ash, scales to dust, runes to sparks flickering out. A blast of flame spiraled upward into the sky, consumed by the heavens that once cast it down. Silence followed, not the silence of peace, but the silence of disbelief. Kadesh dropped from Yoren's hands, landing hard on his knees. His ears rang, breath shuddering. When he looked up, the fallen was gone. Nothing remained but scorched earth where a god had died. The Rakim commander stood beside him. Blood streaked across her cheeks. She took a breath, then another, slow, steady. "It's over," she whispered. Yoren knelt too, towering but humbled. His eyes were distant, mourning a brother slain by mortals, relieved that the ancient terror was finally ended. The ground beneath his knees still trembled slightly, as if the world itself recognized what had just occurred. Kadesh turned a slow circle, taking in the broken field, the corpses, the ashes, the survivors struggling to stand. Humans and Nephilim stared at each other, and for the first time their gaze did not carry hatred. It carried history, because together they had killed the nightmare that created them both. A breeze swept through, carrying away some of the dust, clearing the sky. Stars shimmered above once more, witnesses to a night that would never be forgotten. The war for survival was over, but as Kadesh's weakened heart steadied, he realized something that chilled him to the bone. The world would never be the same after tonight. The age of gods and monsters had ended, and the age of humans had just begun. Dawn crept over the ruined battlefield slowly, as if the sun itself feared to look upon the carnage. Smoke still curled from scorched earth. The air was thick with the metallic smell of blood and the ashes of a being that had once claimed divinity. The warriors of the Ordai and Rakim stood among shattered ballistae and broken bodies. Giants, those few still alive, sat slumped against boulders, their breaths heavy and uncertain. The hatred that once burned between the two races had been smothered overnight by something far more terrifying. shared survival. Kadesh leaned on his snapped spear, each breath rattling his cracked ribs. His vision blurred from exhaustion, yet he forced his mind to remain focused. Leaders were not allowed to collapse yet. The Rakim commander approached, her wolf fur cloak torn and soaked in blood. She studied the horizon where the fallen's ashes had been swallowed by the wind. "If a creature like that truly existed beneath us," she said quietly, "what else is still buried in this world?" Kadesh didn't answer at first. The truth weighed heavily. For every secret revealed, 1,000 more lurked in the shadows. Finally, he murmured, "Whatever comes next, we face it as the world's true guardians." The Rakim commander's dark eyes softened slightly. Respect, not sentiment. "You fought like one meant to lead humanity," she replied. "But what of them?" She nodded toward the Nephilim survivors. One of those survivors, Yoren, knelt beside the charred crater where Raphan had fallen. His massive hand rested over the ashes as if shielding what little remained of a fallen king. His shoulders trembled, not with fear, but grief. He had lost brothers tonight, not just Azel and Raphan, but countless unnamed kin. Humans began to inch away, uneasy. The alliance had been born of necessity, not trust. Now that the greater threat was dead, war could return as swiftly as it had stopped. Kadesh limped toward Yoren. "We did this together," he said. "There doesn't need to be more death." Yoren turned, eyes red with sorrow and smoke. "Our kind was created to rule, yours to serve," he said hoarsely. "But tonight, your people proved something we cannot ignore. You made a god bleed." His gaze swept across the humans, tiny, fragile, yet victorious. "And gods fear you now." The Rakim commander joined them. "So what happens between us?" she asked. The young giant exhaled, a long, slow breath that sounded like stone grinding against stone. "We must rebuild, you in your lands, we in ours. The age of domination is gone." Kadesh nodded, each race free, but knowing the other lives. "Watching," Yoren added. "Not enemies, not allies, a balance born in fire." The sun finally broke free of the smoky haze, laying its first rays across the battlefield, lighting faces of humans and giants alike with the same glow. For the first time ever, their shadows fell in the same direction. Kadesh raised his battered spear one final time, not as a weapon, but as a promise. "We remember this night," he said. "We remember who stood with us and who fell." Around him, survivors bowed their heads, Ordai, Rakim, Nephilim, bound by a truth none could deny. The age of the Nephilim ended here. The future belongs to the children of Earth, to humans, to us. And though the world lay silent, its very soil whispered the beginning of a new era. One where humans would rise, build cities, write history, and even forget this war until myths and scriptures tried to tell the story again. But the truth of that night would forever live in the bloodline of humanity. The night ancient humans fought the Nephilim to death and won. The sun climbed higher, melting the last cold memories of the battlefield's night. Where screams and fire once raged, silence now spread, a silence heavy and sacred. The Ordai and Rakim gathered the fallen, stacking shattered shields into makeshift markers, placing spears upright in the soil to honor warriors who would never see another dawn. Kadesh walked slowly between rows of the dead, recognizing faces of friends, brothers, and young warriors who had trusted him. His heart felt carved from stone, too heavy to carry, too fragile to drop. He stopped beside Arun, the boy he could not save. Kneeling, he pressed his forehead to the ground. "We will build a world where boys like you never need to fight," he whispered. Nearby, the Rakim commander oversaw her own, ancient ritual spoken in a language roughened by mountain winds. She placed obsidian daggers across the chests of her fallen, so their spirits would enter the next journey armed. When she approached Kadesh again, her voice was low but firm. Grief is a burden leaders must share, not carry alone. Kadesh looked at her, tired eyes full of gratitude. What is your name? We fought together. I should know. She paused, then answered simply, Sahri. It was the first moment since their arrival she wasn't just a commander, but a person. Across the field, Yoren stood like a monument of sorrow. He lifted the bodies of his giant kin one by one, bodies heavy with centuries. Even giants weep, though their tears fall like rain. When he reached Azel, he paused. The brutal warlord who had inspired so much fear now looked strangely small in death. A younger Nephilim approached, uncertain. He was cruel to us. Yoren nodded. Yes, but he was ours. Carefully he laid Azel's head down with the respect given to ancient kings. At the center of the field, the crater where the fallen had died glowed faintly with fading embers. Kadesh, Sahri, and Yoren gathered there, 3 figures from 3 worlds tied by one night's fate. Yoren broke the silence. The Watchers who birthed us did so to command you, to rule, but today you proved they no longer decide the order of the world. Sahri folded her arms. We are few now, both tribes. We must learn the shape of peace, or this night will return. Kadesh looked to the horizon, beyond the ashes, beyond the scars, imagining fields, homes, stories, children, a future built not under the shadow of giants, but by the hands of those who survived. Then we build, he said, not walls between us, but foundations for what comes next. No cheers followed. There was only tired acceptance and a quiet promise. The gods of old were gone. What remained was the long work of the living. And as that day's sun finally stood at its highest, its light revealed something new. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore. Humanity was beginning. Weeks passed, then months. The battlefield that had once overflowed with fire and blood slowly became a place of construction. Where bodies were burned, gardens now sprouted. Where trenches carved by claw and blade scarred the land, humans and giants dug new foundations. They called this place Nadreth, the ground of the last war. Kadesh oversaw the Ordai and Rakim working together, though old doubts still flickered beneath the surface. The Rakim were builders of stone and steel, shaped by mountains. The Ordai were masters of the hunt, trackers of beasts, and scouts of wide lands. Their strengths fit together like puzzle pieces humanity had not known it was missing. Slowly, structures rose, sturdy homes stacked from carved rock, and great halls framed by tightened bones, salvaged from the battle. They did not hide what had happened here. They built history into their walls.
Every evening, Cerise stood atop the half-completed watchtower, a towering pillar of granite that would soon guard Natreth, and recited the names of the fallen. Her voice carried through the air like a vow that memory would never fade into silence. Yoren spent his days hauling boulders larger than carts, helping reshape the land his kind once sought to dominate. Children, tiny humans who once trembled in shadows, now ran behind him, laughing, asking him to lift them high enough to touch the clouds. At first, he avoided them, unsure of his place in their future. But one day, he knelt, and a little girl climbed onto his palm. "You're not scary," she said. Yoren felt something shift inside him, a weight lifting. Maybe this was what redemption looked like. Trade routes formed. The Rakim shared their craft of forging obsidian into blades that cut cleaner than iron.
The Ordai taught how to track game through forests and store food for long winters. Together, they mapped rivers that could carry boats and valleys that could grow wheat. But peace was a strange teacher. Some Rakim still flinched when a giant's shadow stretched near. Some Ordai whispered that giants and humans could not honestly share the world. In the night, the old fear crept back in that the bond forged on a battlefield was too fragile to survive peaceful days. Suri recognized this. She watched the people carefully, noting cracks forming before they became breaks. "Trust is a wall," she said to Kadesh one day, "and walls are not built in one night." Kadesh nodded. Then every day we lay another stone. By the end of the first year, Netreth stood proud, not a city of fear, but a symbol of what humanity could rise to when unity triumphed over terror. And yet, when the wind swept across the fields at night, carrying the scent of distant earth, a question always followed. If humans could build so much from ashes, what more waited beyond the horizon? The age of humans had begun, but its story was only just starting. Netreth grew faster than any settlement in human memory. Travelers from distant clans arrived daily, curious, hopeful, or simply hungry for a new life. Ordinary people who had known only fear now found themselves builders of the future. The settlement that began as a refugee camp of survivors evolved into a city of purpose. With growth came the need for order. In the main hall, built from ribs of a fallen Nephilim and stone from the Rakim Mountains, Kadesh called the first council, not of kings, not of warlords, but of those who carried respect rather than authority. Kadesh, bearing the voice of the Ordai, Suri, representing the Rakim, Yorin, speaking for the Nephilim survivors, elders from smaller human clans who now sought unity. Together, they shaped what had never existed before, laws shared by humans and giants alike. Suri began with the most sacred principle: no tribe rules another, none is a slave, all who help build Netreth have an equal place beneath the sun. Yorin proposed a pact. Giants would never again take humans as quarry or subjects. The era of domination was finished. His words carried the weight of centuries, and the others listened. Kadesh spoke last. "And any hand that breaks this peace, be it giant or man, the whole of Netreth will rise against them." A promise of justice, not by bloodline, but by choice. These laws were carved into the stone walls of the Great Hall, so that no one could claim ignorance. Anyone entering Netreth would see them and understand. This city stood on a foundation stronger than bone or iron. As the laws took root, so did culture. The Rakim craftsmen taught the art of forging obsidian tools that gleamed like starless night. Blacksmiths from wandering tribes blended this with bronze techniques, creating a new metalwork more deadly and durable than either tradition alone. Ordai hunters brought knowledge of preserving meat, smoking fish, and weathering harsh seasons. The gardens that grew near the crater thrived, nurtured by ash enriched with strange minerals left by the fallen. Music returned. Drums beat at night. Children learned to play, to carve little animal figures from the bones of beasts instead of living in fear of becoming prey themselves. The first festival came at the turn of the seasons. Humans danced around bonfires, while the Nephilim drummed rhythms that shook the ground like friendly thunder. Yorin carved a towering statue from stone, a memorial to unity, showing a giant and a human standing back to back with raised spears. Eyes that once watched each other cautiously now shared laughter across open flame. But beneath the joy, Suri's eyes remained sharp. She noticed small things: a Rakim who hesitated to share a tool with the giant, an Ordai child who hid behind her mother when Yorin approached. "Wounds heal," she said quietly to Kadesh one day, "but scars remember." If Natreth was to last, she knew they would need not just walls and laws, they would need faith in one another. And that was the hardest thing to build. Natreth, once a scar on the earth, became its heartbeat. Fields spread where fire once raged. Children who never saw giants as monsters grew tall beneath open skies. Music and language blended between tribes until no one could tell where one culture ended and another began. Kadesh's hair turned silver long before his spirit did. He lived to see something he never thought possible, his people thriving in peace, no longer defined by fear or hunger or war. Suri remained the city's watchful safeguard, keeper of memory, defender of truth, ensuring the cost of peace was never forgotten. And Yorin, the young Nephilim who chose humanity over supremacy, became a symbol carved into stone and song, the giant who lifted mankind to the future. But time is relentless. The day finally came when Kadesh stood upon the watchtower, the place where Suri once called out the names of the fallen, and looked across Natreth one last time. Children's laughter drifted up to him, carried by friendly winds. Homes and halls gleamed warm under the sun. People from distant lands traded goods and stories beneath banners that bore no tribe's emblem, only a single mark. 2 hands, one giant, one human, clasped together. His smile was slow, grateful. "We did it," he whispered. Far below, Serene noticed him. She climbed, step by steady step, until she reached his side. In the years since the battle, she had become the quiet iron of Natreth, the one who saw what others did not, the one who remembered when others forgot. "Kadesh," she said softly, "the council awaits. They want your guidance on the eastern settlements." His eyes remained on the horizon. "You lead them now. You've led longer than you know." Before she could reply, footsteps shook the stone gently. Yorin emerged, now as the last of the Nephilim who remained in Natreth. Age touched even giants, though his spirit stayed bright. He knelt, lowering himself to the height of his old friend. "You gave us a chance to change. That is what victory truly means." Kadesh placed a hand on the giant's wrist, with thin fingers against a massive pulse. "We gave each other a chance." He looked to the sky, once filled with wings and wrath, now empty and clear. "This world," he said, "belongs to the builders." And with that final truth spoken, Kadesh's strength faded. He exhaled, head resting against the stone wall of the tower. Suri caught him gently. No fear, no pain, just peace, the peace he had carved from war. By nightfall, the entire city gathered. Under torches and starlight, they told the story of Kadesh the Unbroken, the man who taught humanity that gods can bleed, that giants can change, and that every future is earned. Suri carved his name beside the fallen. Yorin raised a column of stone high above his grave, taller than any statue before it, so that travelers and kings yet unborn would know. Here lies the first human who shaped history with his own hands. Here begins the age of mankind. None alive that night ever forgot the sound of the wind as it passed over the silent tower, carrying one final message into the stars. Humans, once prey, had become the story.